When you think of Plato, what comes to mind? Probably the Republic, right? That famous city in the clouds run by these perfect philosopher kings. Well, what if I told you that his final book, his longest and most detailed work, paints a totally different picture? Today, we're diving into Plato's Laws. This is the grand finale of his life's work, and it shows a huge shift in how he thought about, well, pretty much everything. Politics, justice, human nature, you name it.
I mean, the difference between these two is just staggering. On one side, you have the Republic, which is all theoretical, isn't it? It's about this perfect state that might not ever even exist. But then you look at the laws and wow, it's a super detailed, practical rule book. It's like Plato stopped asking, what is justice in theory, and started asking, okay, how do we actually write laws that work for real people, flaws and all?
So this move from the ideal to the real is a big deal for sure. But that's not even the biggest change. In this final blueprint, Plato does something pretty mysterious. It's a major departure from everything he'd done before.
That's right. Where is Socrates? Think about it. Socrates is Plato's teacher, the hero of almost every single one of his other dialogues. And now, in his final, biggest work, he's gone, just absent. So the big question is, why? Why would Plato sideline the very person he spent his whole life making famous? And here's the key. Plato's whole mission had changed. You know the Socratic method, all that back and forth questioning. It's fantastic for kicking ideas around, but it's not so great when you actually need to write a rule book. By the end of his life, Plato wasn't just exploring anymore. He was laying down the law, literally. He went from being an interrogator to a legislator. So he brings in this new character, the Athenian stranger, who isn't there to ask questions. He's there to give solid, concrete answers.
But this kind of change doesn't just happen in a vacuum. To really get why Plato made such a dramatic pivot, we've got to look at what was going on in his own life, some of the tough lessons he learned the hard way. Okay, so take a look at this timeline of his later years. You see the famous academy he founded, right there in 387 BC. But the real game changer is probably that event in the middle, his trips to Sicily. This is where Plato tried to be a real-world political consultant. He tried to mentor a tyrant, basically, to turn him into the philosopher king from the Republic. And it was a complete disaster, a total failure. That experience seems to have shattered his idealism, convincing him that putting all your trust in one person's wisdom, even a brilliant one, is just way too risky.
And that failure led him to this incredibly powerful new idea. If you can't trust any single person with absolute power, what can you trust? His answer? The law itself. In this new vision, the law is king. The law is the ultimate boss. And everyone, everyone from the top ruler down to the average citizen is a servant to the law. This idea, the sovereignty of law, is honestly one of the most important concepts to ever come out of the ancient world.
So with the law as king, what's next? Well, Plato gets down to business. He draws up this incredibly detailed blueprint for a new city he calls Magnesia, and every single institution he designs has one single goal: to raise good citizens, people who don't just obey the law because they have to, but because they want to.
And these are the core building blocks of his city. First, a mixed constitution. He thought if you blend the best parts of monarchy and democracy, you get stability. Then there's this mysterious-sounding nocturnal council. Basically, a supreme court of wise elders whose job is to protect the laws. Education? Oh, that's a cradle-to-grave project run by the state, all about teaching virtue. But maybe the most revolutionary idea is this last one. Every single major law has to have a preamble, an introduction.
And the way Plato explains this is just brilliant. He uses an analogy of two kinds of doctors. You have the slave doctor, who just walks in, looks at a slave, and barks an order. Do this. No explanation. Then you have the gentle doctor, who treats free citizens. This doctor sits down, explains the illness, explains the treatment, and persuades the patient that this is the right course of action. Plato says laws should be like that gentle doctor. They shouldn't just be commands from on high, they should persuade. They should explain the why behind the rule.
But even with all that, a mixed government, lifelong education, persuasive laws, Plato felt something was missing. For the whole system to be truly stable, to command total respect, he believed it had to be anchored in something bigger than just human ideas. It needed a divine foundation. And this is what leads him, in Book 10 of the Laws, to do something incredible. He lays out one of the very first systematic philosophical arguments for the existence of the gods.
So he basically tackles atheism with a three-part proof.
It's really logical. Step 1, the gods exist. His argument is that soul, which is the source of all movement, has to come before the physical body. Step 2, the gods care about us. He uses an analogy here. A good craftsman, a good artist cares about every single part of their creation, the big parts and the small ones. Why would the gods be any different? And step 3, the gods can't be bribed. I mean, they're perfect beings. You can't just make an offering and expect them to look the other way on injustice. For Plato, this makes the gods the ultimate backup, the final guarantee of the moral order.
You know, it's interesting. The Republic gets all the attention, but you could make a very strong case that the laws had an even bigger impact on how Western civilization actually developed. Seriously, its ideas have been echoing for centuries, shaping how we think about government and law even today.
You can literally trace the influence. Plato's most famous student, Aristotle, he wrestles with the laws all through his own book, Politics. Then you jump to Rome. The great statesman Cicero takes Plato's ideas and adapts some for the Roman Republic. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and that whole idea of a divinely backed law becomes a cornerstone of political theology. And those core concepts, the rule of law, mixed government, laws that persuade, they're not just historical footnotes. They are baked into the DNA of Western legal thought.
So in the end, Plato's final work leaves us with this huge, timeless question. He decided that for a society to really work, to be just and stable, its laws needed to be anchored in something divine, a cosmic order. But was he right? Is that necessary? Or is human reason, all by itself, a strong enough foundation to build a just world? That's the challenge the laws still poses to us today. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.